As Russian soldiers die in droves on the front lines, Putin is hiding away in secret offices all over Russia. The great ostrich of Russian politics has his head firmly buried in the sand, as he is in total denial over what he's seeing. While the Kremlin admits that the Ukraine war is lost, Putin remains the only Russian who seriously believes that Russia can win. This isn't reality. It's a delusion of Putin's own making that persists even as Ukraine does something so gigantic that every plan that Russia has is crumbling. Right now, Ukraine has a massive advantage on the battlefield. And it's all the result of the technology that Ukraine has brought to the fore ever since Putin launched his invasion. Drones. Specifically, Ukraine's middle-range drones are wreaking havoc on Russia's forces by striking behind the front lines. This in turn ruins Russian logistics, takes out command and control centers, and stops Russia from launching attacks against Ukraine from its rear. Ukraine has seized this opportunity. It's taking advantage of what's become a clear gulf between its technology and that possessed by Russia to launch counterattacks as it causes chaos in the Russian rear. All of which adds up to one clear fact. Ukraine is in the best position that it's been in for almost a year. That's according to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who said on April 3rd that intelligence provided by UK sources has revealed that the frontline situation in Ukraine right now is as good for Ukraine as it has been for a long time. By the way, on Wednesday, there was a report from my intelligence and an analysis from British intelligence. I received MI6 assessment of the situation on our front line, specifically that the current situation is the best for Ukraine in the past 10 months. Zelensky declared middle-range drones are the big reasons why. And there are plenty inside the Kremlin and Russia's military complex who are trying to warn Putin even as Russia's president walks around with his fingers shoved firmly in his ears. We'll be coming back to those warnings and Putin's state of delusion soon. First, at the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, backs the assessment that Ukraine's drones currently dominate the sky. In an April 10th post on X, the ISW said, Russian and Ukrainian reporting appears to confirm battlefield reporting that Ukrainian forces have achieved a drone advantage over Russian forces on the battlefield. That advantage lies at the heart of Russia's stalled spring offensive and Ukraine's ability to launch successful counterattacks. The ISW at the key to Ukraine's recent successes seems to be an increase in strikes against Russian air defense systems, which has in turn opened up safe aerial corridors to enable the other mid-range drone attacks that we mentioned earlier. The Atlantic Council adds that after years of tit-for-tat fighting on the drone front, Ukraine has definitively pulled ahead against Russia. Short and long-range strikes have been joined by attacks against Putin's forces in the near rear, meaning Ukraine can cover the distance that lies behind the 20 kilometers or so that its FPV drones cover in the vast kill zones of Ukraine, and ahead of the 300 kilometers or more that Ukraine's long-range drones can travel for strikes inside Russia itself. Again, it's all technology. Ukraine's tech is better than Russia's tech, and that is news that Putin simply cannot take. It bucks the narrative, ruins the propaganda. But the numbers don't lie, and they say everything that needs to be said about the Russian offensive right now. Since January, Ukraine's mid-range strikes have come close to tripling in number. According to reports, in January, there were 41 strikes. February saw Ukraine unleash 61 of its mid-range drones heading into March when Ukraine sent 115 of its lethal new weapons in Russia's direction. Those mid-range strikes are part of the 11,000 combat missions per day that the Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Alexander Siersky, says that Ukraine's unmanned systems forces are now unleashing. This is unbridled drone dominance, and March was the peak of it all so far. Ukraine's drone forces smashed 150,000 verified targets, which is 50% more than they hit in February. And the numbers keep on coming. Ukraine's medium-range strikes have shattered 143 of Russia's warehouses and logistics facilities, CISATs. Another 52 Russian command posts have fallen to Ukraine's drone dominance, as have 20 of the country's oil, gas, and energy infrastructure facilities in the near rear. These numbers should be undeniable, and to many in Russia, they aren't. Even as Putin tries to keep his head buried in the sand, alarm bells are ringing in the Kremlin. The Russian hierarchy can see the disaster that's unfolding, even if Putin won't, and they're trying to warn him. As RBC Ukraine reported on April 10th, no less than Andrei Belelosov, who has been Russia's defense minister since May 2024, having taken the position after Putin ousted Sergei Shoigu, is trying to tell Putin what is happening. Belousov has reportedly stated that the drone situation in Ukraine is now critical as Ukraine has reached the point where it's achieved both technological and numerical superiority over Russian forces. The loss of Starlink also appears to have reduced the effectiveness of Russia's drone strikes from within the occupied territories. And Ukraine has developed a new generation of equipment that is unlike anything that Russia has ever seen before. Russia is largely unprepared to deal with the more sophisticated systems that Ukraine is deploying, and the Kremlin knows it. The man whom Putin himself appointed to discover these kinds of problems and create solutions is screaming about it from the rooftops, and Putin simply isn't listening. What Belousov is really saying with all of this is that the war as it stands right now is lost for Russia unless Putin can do something other than churn the country's soldiers up in the meat grinder that he created. But if Belousov is trying to calmly break the news to Putin, there are others inside Russia who are far angrier. They are the military bloggers, and they have plenty to say about the state of Russia's campaign in Ukraine right now. If Putin weren't so busy shutting himself off from reality, he will be able to see that the last 4 years have seen the military bloggers go from constant patriotic brown-nosing to open criticism of Russia's invasion. Those bloggers aren't saying that the invasion should have never happened, but instead, they're telling Putin, often indirectly, that the invasion has been a failure because of constant military incompetence. Professional propagandists all over Russia are now turning against Putin. Alex Chadai, who heads the Ushkuni facility that is responsible for much of Russia's drone development, has gone from barely being able to open his mouth without singing Putin's praises to criticizing Russian society as a whole. Russia has built feudalism into its society, Chad claims. And that backward way of thinking both strips citizens of their rights and closes the door on the sort of innovation that could allow Russia to keep pace with Ukraine's technological advances. Other critics include the military blogger Rybar, who has around 1 million subscribers on Telegram. He and others like him are now saying that Russia's offensive in Ukraine has run into a dead end. They're rallying against the possibility of mobilization, claiming it will be pointless in the current circumstances. And they even accuse Putin's generals on the front of hiding reality from him. Also that the Russian president can continue to sail lost in his sea of delusion. Tactics, commanders, and the very version of Russia that Putin has built are being openly criticized by Kremlin cheerleaders. Those cheerleaders aren't doing this out of malice toward Putin. His authoritarianism is what keeps him in business. What they want is for Putin to accept the realities on the battlefield and perhaps realize that tactics that have resulted in over 1.3 million casualties so far and many more to come didn't work then and definitely won't work now. That Ukraine's drone advantage is so extensive. Things have already started to shift for Russia. But the situation has escalated even further. As Ukraine presses its technology advantage on the front, it's doing the very same thing in the rear. Defense is as effective as offense for Ukraine. And we are going to explain exactly what that means in a moment. Before we do, this is a quick side note to let you know that you are watching the military show. There's a lot more where this type of analysis comes from, so subscribe to the channel to make sure you never miss a video. On the defensive front, Ukraine's drone advantage is becoming as critical as its offensive advantage has become. Ukrainian interceptor drones, which are cheap and extremely effective, are taking out more of Russia's long-range attack drones than ever before. Again, the numbers don't lie. Ukraine intercepted 2,975 of Russia's drones in January. That number rose to 3,679 in February. Then it shot up like a rocket. March saw Ukraine take 7,674 of Russia's drones out of the sky before they could do any sort of damage. The ISW reports, don't underestimate the importance of this particular battlefield evolution. The main reason why Russia launches so many drones at Ukraine is so it can achieve precisely what Ukraine is doing right now against Russia's forces. Shahd are supposed to shatter Ukraine's infrastructure. They destroy military targets, terrorize civilians, and break energy networks. All of this is in service of weakening Ukraine's defense on the front. But now, as Ukraine's interception rate rises and Russia can find no answer for the technological advances Ukraine has brought to the battlefield, all of that is slipping away. Ukraine is cracking Russia's rear. Russia is failing to do the